Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 12th webinar towards COP26 for the LGMA constituency. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLEI. I'm also acting as the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency focal point. This is a regular monthly call of the networks that are included or connected to the UNFCCC process, the networks of local and regional governments, and of course their members. This is announced publicly. This event is announced publicly, but our participants are usually those who are involved in the UNFCCC process. For our webinars, we usually start with a presentation or updates or from panelists. Today, I will be alone. During the presentation, we prefer all participants as muted. And once the presentation is over, we are able to open the floor for discussions. You can raise your hands, you can type in the chat box, and we can also unmute you so that you can intervene and others can also listen. So with this in mind, and I also would like to recall that these sessions are recorded and it is available on the web YouTube channel of ICLEI LGMA, so that this can be further used by others, so that you can share the link as well. So with this, let me go immediately to the agenda for today. Because this is the first webinar of the year, obviously there's a need for us to have a recap or recall what we have achieved in 2020. We'll spend some time in 2021 agenda, and we will also share with you our ideas for a reloaded roadmap towards COP26, taking into account what we have achieved and building on what we could expect during the next couple of months. With this, let me also recall that these monthly webinars, all the previous ones are available, both the presentations and recordings. We enjoyed participation from both COP26 and COP25 presidencies, guests like UNFCCC or Scottish Government, as well as Ralga and Glasgow throughout the year. I think this was an opportunity for us to keep updated each other in terms of what's going on, and we want to thank once again. And throughout the year, in this round, let's say, we will also be looking forward to having contributions from a variety of partners, and we would like to thank you all for your support in that process as such. For those who are new in the process, we are basically assuming that the Paris Climate Agreement is important for local and regional governments because, unlike the UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol, this is the first time we are acknowledged or recognized as a partner. Therefore, voluntary climate action of local governments, which stems from 1990s already, is now not anymore a voluntary action, but it's a part of our responsibility towards global and national processes. Therefore, anything that comes from Paris Agreement is also binding for us. We have a responsibility to deliver its success. We also have duties, and of course, we would like to have more resources and more opportunities so that we can effectively engage in the process. If you look at the historical evolution, we can basically split the process into before Paris Agreement. We had our roadmap, climate roadmap. We have participated in negotiations. Obviously, the NASCA summit, NASCA portal, and the UN Climate Summit was important. We also have worked with the Friends of Cities, the national governments, who have helped us to craft the details of our engagement in the preamble paragraph of Paris Agreement and the rest of the paragraphs. After the Paris Agreement adopted, we continued, especially with the new initiatives like Marrakesh Partnership. We elevated to Friends of Multilevel Action. We participated in the Global Climate Action Summit and UN Climate Action Summit in 2019 as well. And now we have reached to where we are now. And here are the specific paragraphs, which means that we should be able to have a reference or let's say vision for us in all elements of the Paris Agreement. For those again who are new, we are updating this chart every presentation. At the moment it says October, but this is the latest version as of January 2021. This is a chart of who's doing what, the key leaders and the responsibilities and the processes that is being implemented on the way towards COP. Obviously, we have the last year's, or let's say the last COP presidency is continuing to serve the Chile and their champion. Obviously, the new, or let's say incoming presidency has been developing their processes, their teams, their support systems. This is as of January what it looks like. The most important update is that Alok Sharma, whom we have met a couple of times in many occasions, and then we have been enlightened with his interventions, also support to our actions as LGMA constituency. He is now in the UK government cabinet as assigned as solely or standalone responsible for the COP26 presidency. Previously, he was hosting the position of business secretary of business enterprises and industrial strategy that led him to have two hats. So it was the time when Brexit negotiations were also advancing. So he had to split himself a number of slices. And then considering that, I assume, I mean, we don't know the internal discussions, but now that Brexit is over and now that COP is coming up very fast, they have decided to assign him only the responsibility on the COP, but still keeping him as a member of the cabinet. It gives him the access to the president, prime minister of COP of UK, which is still an empowerment that he has a ministerial power. But obviously he is expanding his team now. Obviously, we have been discussing about Nigel Topping and Mark Carney. We now know in the chart that is announced in the presidency website, they also have an advisor for adaptation, Ms. Anne-Marie Trevelyan. They have regional ambassadors. For example, we have met with the ambassador for Africa at the local Climate Solutions for Africa meeting in Kigali, hosted by Kigali and ICLEI last November. So for every continent or every region, they also have specific ambassadors that is giving them the access to the discussions at the stakeholders at that level or at that region. They have the UK COP presidency has a number of councils that are giving them advices or they are consulting. First and most important of them is the Friends of COP. This is a broad representation from national governments, but also stakeholders. Cities are represented by Eric Garcetti, mayor of Los Angeles, and he's also the C4 chair. There is a civil society and youth advisory council, which I am attending regularly in their calls. There is a devolved administration ministerial advisory council. This is the relation of the UK with their devolved administration, namely Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. And they also have a cities and regions advisory council, mainly the mayors of metropolitans or regional governments, specifically for the UK. They also continue to host regular meetings with constituency focal points, and we are attending these calls as well. So coming back to what to expect, we were aware that this is a cyclic process. We have regular agendas and regular discussions, but every year presidencies also put their own agendas. Now you see the 5 initiatives or 5 pillars of the UK climate presidency, UK COP26 presidency, and we have our own 7 pillars of our local and government and municipal authorities constituency. I will go into the details the next slide. So the logic is that we should be able to combine this, but we should also continue to follow the regular agendas of the negotiations as well. This is in one slide aiming to summarize what we achieved in 2020. So obviously, when we started the year, we have only 6 elements, and over these months, we have numerous occasions to meet with Mayor of Glasgow and Glasgow colleagues. They have numerously repeated their interest to put justice into heart of the COP26 due to the legacy of Glasgow and also the vision of Glasgow for the future. Therefore, we thought it would be a perfect match considering what we have been doing in the Marrakesh Partnership Human Settlements Group, but as well as the previous initiatives of the LGMA members like GCOM and Global Task Force Joint Statement on Climate Justice. So now, after 11 months, we have revised, we have now 7 pillars. We also have, you see the logos beneath, at the beginning of last year, it was only an idea, but we invited our partners, especially, of course, because of the geographical scope, we have much more European than the UK-led or UK-based partners. We have a working group. The logos that you see below are those who are contributing to our 6 or 7 now pillars with their own initiatives or their collective efforts. Obviously, over this last year, we had relatively kept the working group silent so that we focus on much more on the UN process, but also understand what's going on. But obviously, this will be a discussion in the today's or let's say next weeks and months, how to re-energize our working group as well as also an agenda for us. For those who recall what we have done, maybe if we can go through this monthly work. Obviously, the first 3 months we were busy with the let's say acclimatizing ourselves to the COVID-19. It was obviously not very easy for us, all of us, both our members, cities and regions, their politicians and their experts, to deal with COVID, but also the global negotiation. So after a couple of months of, let's say, soul searching, we have first started our first interaction with the champions, Nigel Topping and Gonzalo Munoz, through an LGMA webinar in May. This also evolved after that a ministerial mayor dialogue. In June, there was the Race to Zero process kicked off. We had in Santiago in August the regional mobilization of the cities and regions in Latin America. Then we had participated in Japan redesign, event 75 and UN Biodiversity summits. Urban October were very, very heavy, obviously, for all the years for the local governments because of the Cities Day and Habitat Day. We had Mannheim message from the European partners. We had Daring Cities conference for 3 weeks, led by ICLEI, Bonn and German government, federal ministries, development and state of North Rhine-Westphalia. We had in November, the African mobilization, which means in fact that throughout this past year, we had made huge mobilization both regionally in Latin America and Africa, but also Europe. That is, I think, is helpful for us to be committed that our base is much more aware of what's going on, but obviously we have to keep them more informed and engaged. We participated in the November dialogues of Race to Zero. The cities program was there. We have kicked off the cities Race to Zero campaign. We were particularly active in the climate dialogues with a number of interventions and side events and sessions. In December, around the towards the Paris Agreement anniversary, it was also very busy. In the UK, there was a roadmap announced by UK 100. In the Paris City Hall, there was a Zero Carbon Forum, which concluded with Paris Declaration. And at the Paris Agreement anniversary, we had participation both live program by C40, but as well as in the on-demand session. We have the LGMA video, we have the ICLEI's Voices from Ground Zero, and also ICLEI announcements for Transformative Action Program, and a number of other partners inside and outside the LGMA, mayors and other partners. This was like the way, the road that we took last year. If we look at what this all affects, let's say all these efforts have resulted in, what we can say in the race to, in the first agenda item, raising ambition, we have made pretty good progress. We have now more than 500 cities and regions who are now known publicly that they have committed to climate neutrality by 2050. This is a huge information and a base for us. If you look at 5 years ago in the Paris Agreement, we had several hundreds of cities who had made mitigation and adaptation commitments, but climate neutrality by 2050, significant number of them also declaring climate emergencies, is something that is really, really powerful to communicate worldwide. Obviously, in the Race to Zero, the effort is to make sure that they also have midterm targets like 2030. And now there's a new initiative called Race to Resilience, and that will also come soon. We will discuss it in the next couple of minutes. The second agenda we had was NDC vertical integration. That also has been improving, I must confess, much better than I expected, especially throughout the year. We have seen countries like Korea, Japan, Chile, Rwanda coming up with very ambitious, very promising, encouraging elements, each of them unique. None of them are similar or replicating each other because of their national conditions are different. But it is much more, let's say, encouraging for us to be hopeful that over the next couple of months, we could be seeing new NDCs which have more elements to local and regional engagement. We are already working in the CAET, the NDC partnership. Around 50% of those 50 countries are focusing on subnational elements. ICLEI is working, and a number of other partners are working as well. With Global Covenant of Mayors, we're working on the regional and locally determined contributions. We are hoping that EU Climate Pact could introduce some new elements. And we also are trying to seek how we can advance the Partnership for Collaborative Climate Action as the legacy of Heidelberg in 2019, as well as re-energizing the UNFCCC Friends of Multilevel Action, especially with the coming of the Biden-Harris administration. Finance, in that sense, has also made some progress, especially we now have an operationalization of the GAP fund. That is good news. Now we have much more confidence that our project pipeline facilities could operate much more effectively. We have been announcing that there are more than 8 cities who have made for divestment in their plans, and then C40 also made a declaration for that. The mitigation adaptation balance has been focused on COVID-19, obviously, especially with the UN Secretary General's policy brief, and also the new concepts of recovery, response, and redesign with Japan. These are all encouraging moments for us to say that urban investments could really be connected to climate action, and that will be making the leapfrogging, or really not going back to the old normal, but going to a new normal, which is much more towards sustainability. There are progress in transport and 100% renewables as well. We have been focusing on circular economy and nature. We have Marrakesh Partnership now having a specific chapter on human settlements and waste and consumption. We have Edinburgh Declaration, again, important element in the biodiversity negotiations. It's good because it's also connected to the Scottish government, who will be one of the hosts of the COP26. And obviously, for the first time, we had UN Biodiversity Summit. And we are seeing more and more initiatives coming up, for example, like the One Planet Summit. In terms of how to find global climate action, we still have an idea or a vision to have the first ministerial of urban ministers on the climate agenda at COP. We'll see how much we can work on it. There are discussions on UN reforms. We are working with the culture community. At the World Urban Forum, we had a focus on culture. With the Climate Heritage Network, we are working on the culture and climate. And we're trying to connect to the other elements of the UNFCCC on stakeholder engagement, especially like action for climate empowerment. And with climate justice, we will see, we'll work with Glasgow and other partners to come up with an actionable agenda for our work. So this was the history, or let's say this was the past. Now let's look at the future. The future is obviously still a bit blur in the sense you're all aware and you're feeling in everyday life that COVID-19 pandemic is still not over. It is still not realistic to expect global meetings convened to be convened as the way we had expected before COVID. Therefore, any meetings now has to be very carefully assessed in terms of what exactly it is. What I mean in that sense is that over the past months, after the first couple of, let's say, shock of lockdowns and all these limitations of travel, the global community, I mean, thanks to technology, thanks to the skilled leaders and visionary staff, or visionary leaders and skilled staff, many institutions, many networks, many local entrepreneurs were able to transform their gatherings into virtual processes. This is now, I mean, almost daily we're having a number of webinars and Zoom calls or other platforms. So it's not anymore impossible to meet. But what is impossible at this stage, as of still today, is the negotiations, which is national governments coming into a process where they work on a document, they put their red tapes or they insert their text, and then finally they agree. This is still not done virtually. It doesn't mean that it is impossible. Nothing is impossible. The COVID-19 responses have proved us that nothing is impossible, especially with this advancement of the technology. However, it needs to be agreed by parties. It has to be having some procedures and rules. Therefore, it is possible that anything that refers to the negotiations, this could be technical meetings, subsidiary body meetings, conference of parties. It is still possible that these official meetings can be postponed. Whereas anything that you hear in the agenda when it says a summit, a conference, a dialogue, it is very likely that this will be happening very likely virtually, and everybody will be happy because it is enabling people to engage without traveling. Obviously, there are language issues, but those who have resources can introduce translators. Those who have difficulties to access from their domestic internet connections, they may be offered some other opportunities. But virtual connections are more and more appreciated by many partners globally. Therefore, throughout the year, we're expecting this kind of events to be happening, except that we still have to be clear, or let's say we still have to be prepared for additional announcements for subsidiary body meetings in June and COP26 in November. When we say expected, in the sense that it may be possible, depending on the conditions of the host, which is Germany, UK, and in some case Italy because of the pre-COP, there may be preparations of, yes, we are opening the doors. You remember there are European champion matches, be it football, be it basketball, they are still taking place. Obviously, they don't have audience. Their number of participants are different, but there's still possibility of making some events happening. They may introduce some new measures. Obviously, the number of participants will be significantly lower, even pandemic is over. But the virtual connectedness will be very, very high. So we are expecting a hybrid mechanism. Obviously, we may be wrong, everything can be different, but this is still a possibility. Under these conditions, of course, we should be prepared how we will be engaged in that kind of modalities. Obviously, in the next couple of months, the decisions of the European Cup in Scotland, the Tokyo Olympics, whether it will be taking place or not, will all give us the signal whether we could expect a COP in the size of like 10,000 people, including delegations, media, staff, volunteers, and the observers like local governments, and whether it can be held in Glasgow still. So that is the most important thing we should keep in mind. We should be prepared as if it could be happening in the conditions of COVID-19, which is very limited in physical space, but very, very open in terms of virtual space. Other events, I would expect that all of them, almost all of them, will be virtual without any question. Therefore, let's go now on through the agenda. In this chart, we have tried to group those events on the UNFCCC agenda, the national or the other UN agenda, and anything that is others outside. If we look at, let's go month by month. The month we are in now is January. The climate adaptation summit next week in Rotterdam will be major agenda. There will be announcements coming on adaptation, including race to resilience. So let's be alerted for that. This will be on Monday, Tuesday next week. Obviously, tomorrow's inauguration of Biden-Harris administration is an important agenda. It does not have an immediate impact to the climate, but the day after, there are rumors that there will be an executive order by the President of the United States that the US will be back to the Paris Agreement. Let's see, and let's hope, let's cross fingers, all will be okay. In February, we have the fifth assembly of the UN Environment Assembly, or the fifth session of the UN Environment Assembly. It will be split into two. It will be virtual, with the permanent representatives also connecting from the Nairobi. It will be end of February. This will be mainly procedural, that they will agree on their budget and then strategic work, but the substantial discussion on especially nature will be postponed to 2022. And I think that could even give you or all of us kind of a model of expectations for all the other upcoming meetings. That could also even apply to COP. Let's see. March will be very heavy in two areas. First, the UK COP26 presidency will host a special event entitled as Climate and Development Conference or something like that. It will not be a summit, because when we say summit, it is heads of states. The climate and development will not be heads of state, but at ministerial level. This will be especially an opportunity to address the vulnerability, the finance, and other issues. There are rumors, or let's say there are preparations. More updates will be hopefully shared by the UK COP26 presidency. But the information we received so far through the constituency focal points is that this is really filling an important gap in the climate space, especially when we see that relatively NDC process or raising ambition is starting to evolve, but still support to the developing countries or developing country or vulnerable communities, be it in the north and south, including urban poor as well, is still not clear. So let's hope, just like the Climate Ambition Summit, Climate and Development Conference of the UK COP26 presidency could introduce new momentum. On the same, or let's say similar dates, we hope it will be not on the same dates, but Japan will host International Net Zero Cities Forum. We're expecting this to be announced soon. This will be a promise delivered by the Minister of Environment of Japan, Koizumi, since last year. They have been modeled in terms of raising the ambition, national ambition through local and prefecture governments, and they have committed to host such a forum. It could be resembled like the impact of the redesign platform. Obviously, it will not be ministerial, but for cities especially, or prefectures, regions, we believe this is an important moment that in the beginning of the year, in March, this forum could give us to make some announcements, to make some initiatives, and to prepare better to roll out Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. April will be busy because it's the traditional Earth Day, 22nd of April. It's also the anniversary of Paris Agreement, let's say, opening for ratification. It's also the moment where US Biden Harris administration will celebrate their first 100 days. It's always a historic moment for all these leadership. They would wish to see that or promote the impact they have created. So we can expect another event led by the US. In New York, UN President Assembly, as President of the UN General Assembly will host an event on desertification on 22nd of April. In May, we may expect some regional climate weeks. We may expect some progress on the rolling out the climate action pathways. But most importantly, we have elections in the UK and Scotland. In the UK, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales, we will have the municipal elections. And in Scotland, we will have Scottish Parliament elections. They will all be held on the 6th of May. Obviously, it doesn't have any impact to the COP26 preparations directly. However, any change in the leadership, any political discussions, hopefully renewed commitment on climate agenda as part of the election debate will be indirectly influence the planning and the design and delivery of the COP26 in Glasgow as well. In May, we also have the global celebration of Biodiversity Day. In June, it's becoming a bit hot. We are still not clear, or we don't know yet, how the traditional negotiation sessions, which is the subsidiary meeting, will be held, or whether it will be held. There is a possibility that it may be turned into a dialogue, just like that has happened in November last year, which is fully virtual. All the agendas are discussed, but no decisions are adopted, so that it is relaxed, it is much more open, but it is the weakness is that it doesn't result any decisions. On that front, this year G7 and G20 will be unique because the COP26 presidency and pre-COP26 is coming to the screen of the global agenda in June onwards. And in that sense, we have the first event as the G7 heads of state meeting. The date exactly is not announced, but it will be south of Wales, Cornwall, I guess so. I just read it yesterday. So it's a heads of state of G7, but the G7 UK presidency has also a vision to turn this or complement this with another initiative called D10, which is expanding this G7 to additional countries like India, Korea, and Australia. We'll see what it means. Obviously, it will have consequences in terms of raising ambition as well. We put it in the UNFCCC because G7 is not regularly a UNFCCC process or a UN process, but because G7 presidency is the UK COP26 presidency, this year it has a unique opportunity. And we also have Commonwealth summits. We don't know whether it is announced in November, June or not, but it is also an important agenda. It is the biggest community of the nations other than United Nations. So we'll see, and it's always influenced by the UK leadership. So let's see how it will be evolving. In the UN other side, we have the celebrations for the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. And in the regional level, we have expectations for EU climate law to be operationalized, and we hope there will be more elements to make sure ambitions of European nations could be strengthened by integrating their commitments from cities and regions as well. Similarly, on others agenda, we have the 5th of June and 17th of June. The 5th of June, World Environment Day, 17th of June is World Desertification Day. But on the 12th of June, we are already heard that Urban 20 will also convene in Rome and Milan. This is important because we have always been looking forward to additional inputs of the Urban 20 process. Over these years, it was in Buenos Aires, Tokyo, and Riyadh, and we expect, because of the variety of reasons, the Urban 20 to be hosted in Milan and in collaboration with Rome will be much more ambitious than ever before. Therefore, we look forward to additional announcements from C40, UCLG, who are leading this process, but as well as the hosts, which is Milan and Rome as well, and we will keep you updated on that. In July, G20 will have climate ministerial. That's a good signal to have continuity of climate and environment ministers being part of the G20 agenda. It is not always the case. It was not always given. Over these years, it was only last year, the Saudi presidency, where they had a specific G20 environment ministerial, but unfortunately it didn't produce any results. So let's hope the G20 ministerial on climate under the leadership of the Italian government will be productive and fruitful, obviously hoping that they will sort out the government challenges in the next couple of days, because they are facing a vote of confidence. Let's wish the best to our colleagues in Italy. In July, we have the HLPF, the review of SDGs. This year, one of the core SDG will be SDG 13 climate, which is of course helping us to raise the profile of climate and sustainable development goals. In September, we have COP26 at the end of September, early October. We do not know whether Race to Zero Champions will have similar November dialogues like they have done last year. Let's remember, if COP26 is expected to be extremely limited in size, it may be possible that the October dialogues may be taking place in Glasgow as an alternative, that the access of the non-party stakeholders to the real COP may be limited. That's not what we would wish to, but it is not out of possibility. I just wanted to flag this. And the G20 heads of state will be meeting on the 30th and 31st of October, which is the day before COP starts in Glasgow. Obviously, how this will influence the heads of state engagement in Glasgow, we have to check. And obviously, Italy and UK partners, leaders will have a discussion on that, I assume. But asking leaders to travel from Rome to Glasgow in a day's time, I don't see it as really realistic. Probably there could be a different setting, so we can expect more information from the leaders of the Italy and UK. In the UN front, in September and October, we will be extremely busy. We will have the General Assembly of UN. We will always be expecting some interactions. This time it will be high-level dialogues on energy, but it's more important, we have the UN Food System Summit. The dates are not announced, but we're expecting this to be around the UN General Assembly dates, which is the second half of September. September is also important for another country in Europe, which is Germany. German federal elections will be held in September. The coalition government in Germany, we don't know, of course, what will be its composition or how long it will take for them to come up with a term. But it is highly likely there will be a contribution or engagement of the Greens, which used to be one of the coalition partners in the early 2000s, which was one of the reasons why both Germany and EU was so much positively aggressive on climate action and ambitious in the early 2000s. So a comeback from the Greens, knowing that they're already advancing a lot in the local level, like Bonn, Köln, Hanover, Freiburg, or let's say Stuttgart, or at the federal level, like Baden-Württemberg, they may be also introducing a number of new elements into the German climate policy, which of course would influence the EU climate policy as well. So it is important. Obviously, it may not have immediate results to COP26 because of the very short distance or time lapse, But obviously on the medium term, it will have huge consequences. We are also expecting that the biodiversity COP will be, it's not announced yet, it is still officially announced in May, but unrealistic from our perspective. So we, from ICLEI side, we're prepared to have it in October in Kunming, hopefully. You may recall Chinese government is much more, let's say, advanced in terms of handling the COVID, even though they are also seeing now new lockdowns. But obviously, a summit is not just the host country. We're talking about 200 countries sending delegations. Obviously, when the vaccination and when others are in limbo, it may not be safe to ask so many participants to travel. And obviously, if biodiversity COP is postponed, what will mean to COP26 climate, we'll see. In September, we also expect, or we are prepared to have the Air Cities event of ICLEI. This time it will not be 3 weeks, but we'll see how it will be adjusted. We also have the IUCN World Congress. This is an important actor in the global scene, especially on biodiversity. And obviously, October is always an urban October for the local government and regional government and their communities, urban communities. So we are expecting there a number of new events to come up, and we hope that just 1 month before COP, Climate COP, Urban October could show strongly how multi-level action or localization of Paris Agreement could be an important factor to raise ambition. November, COP26, and December, there is a possibility of a desertification COP, but we don't know. Again, we have to wait and see. The last slide for this today is our vision for a roadmap to reload our roadmap. In that sense, we have said that we have 7 pillars, but it's not always very clear about how we prioritize these 7 agendas, and it's also not very easy to expect same level of progress or a delivery in all of them, because each of them have different target groups. So, but we are thinking that we can split this to 7 pillars into 3 main chapters. One is on the localization of the Paris Agreement, that we have NDCs, that they have to be multi-levelly developed, and we have to have raising of ambition, raise to zero, raise to resilience. So this is a package on Paris Agreement. The second is accelerating climate action. Excuse me. That is with or without Paris Agreement, inside UNFCCC or outside, there's things going on, and we should be thinking of them as a separately different than a bit different than the NDC. So there are a lot of roads, or there are a lot of opportunities for us to make progress in these areas. Finance, we have seen the GAP Fund operationalizing. Green Climate Fund now, it's a new coming up. They have a new guideline for cities. Article 6, obviously, we have to see what's going on. We have to advance on divestment. We have seen State of New York also joined that. We have just heard Mayor's Challenge. The Bloomberg Philanthropy is now offering 1 million grant for 15 cities. I mean, looking at the challenge, we are trying to get funding from the UN or national governments, 1 million is not small. Therefore, obviously, Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Mayor's Challenge, is becoming an actor in the global climate finance for cities. So let's not ignore, and let's make sure the best out of it. Mitigation adaptation was an recalling there should be a balance of it. We all see that COVID-19 has to be coming up into the board. Again, 100% renewable energy and mobility. For us, it seems that this still may be adaptation to be a bit underestimated here, but we have to see how we can work on it. We have originally focused on circular economy and nature, but we are seeing a number of calls or initiatives on food and health. So maybe we could also bundle this group with food and health as well. In the third layer, the amplification, or let's say expanding the base of climate action or the base of climate community, we also would like to group this separately, because we want to reach out to urbanization ministerial, we want to reach out to culture community, we want to reach out to education ministers. So this is slightly different than NDC discussion, slightly different than the technical implementation of the climate action. It's a bit more mobilization, connecting to social actors or different ministerials. And then we have the climate justice and social equity. That is also a unique and a separate process. So we have to come up with something else for these groups as well. And finally, last year we did not touch upon it, but For this year now, we have to start preparing our plans for the mobilization at COP26, pre-COP, G20 and G7 summits. This means that we should plan whether we will be able to host multi-level action pavilions, or whether we will have multi-level action summits, whether we will have multi-level action days or thematic days like Buildings Day, Built Environment Day, Transport Day. Let's see. And obviously, we are a big family. You see all these logos beneath. There are a lot of those who are not there. We have Global Task Force. We have other partners. It doesn't mean that all of us should be there everywhere, especially in this pandemic condition. So we have to create a good synergy that the inputs from one process goes to the output as the benefits from the output for another process, that we can think about the synergy among all these events, and we can be proud the hosts of these events or those who lead in this process, and feed back to our roadmap working group or roadmap LGMA process, so that we can build upon each other's efforts. And for this, I think from the next couple of weeks, we have to revise the working modalities of our working group, and we will come up with some ideas on that. But it's just and this is aiming to make a kickoff for this process. With that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. I know it was already 40 minutes. I thank you a lot for your patience. The floor is open. There are also opportunities to type in chat, but I just noticed that in the chat box, we have a feature. Some of participants are registered to the ICLEI, for example, channel, I guess, because all of them are seen as Matteo Bisotto, which is my colleague from ICLEI communications team. For example, I know in the chat box, I see that there is an input, but I don't think it is from Matteo. Matteo is based in Bonn, and I don't think he's the one who's commenting on it, but someone else is there. So in case someone wants to contribute, you can type in the chat box and we can unmute, which will be a challenge because they're seeing so many Matteos. Those who register as Matteos, it will be difficult. But if you chat in the chat box, maybe you can raise your hand, but also you can also say who you are, so that you're not Matteo, but you're someone else. And many thanks for your flexibility that with this challenge we are seeing. I see one hand already raised. Patricia, do you see this? I have difficulty to see all of them.
He can talk now.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Yunus. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Okay, this is Eva Baños de Guisasola. So I'm working for CMR, the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. First of all, I wish you all a very happy and healthy year. Okay, and let's aim for for the end of this crisis in all senses. So, Yunus, thanks a lot for the brilliant presentation. It's all very clear, the recap and also the way forward. Now, considering all these circumstances, I wanted to ask you, how do you foresee how we can introduce our input into the upcoming test of COP, because now we, as you said, the negotiations are taking place somehow, but negotiators are not meeting physically. So what are the chances that we can introduce maybe some inputs into any drafts? So that's one question. And then second one, since we're also part of the COP26 unit of the UK government as well, how do you foresee some kind of joint position paper ahead of COP? Because now, there are, I just mentioned, there are many actors, and we can see the logos in the slide. So how can we put something together, not only in the draft documents of UN, but also as a mobilizing advocacy paper? I don't know if there's any foreseen, and we will be willing to assist in any drafting process if you want to. But how can we join forces, and do some kind of position paper so we can present it in whatever conference we attend or whatever events? Because I think that considering the virtual meetings, there are much more chances that, or many more chances that we can maybe disseminate our key messages. And this can also be a milestone that we can recycle later on. As you said, the action from some partners can be reused and recycled in different events. And, we have seen that there are many opportunities throughout the year. So I think that we can start building something in January, and then in December, well, whenever the COP takes place, if it takes place this year, in November, then we can really present some outcomes, and then we can just have a very long process. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations for the clear explanation.
Thanks, thanks, Ella. Thanks for your kind words also, especially for the start of the year. I just skipped it, but it would, of course, should be mentioned. I also join your nice wishes. Let's collect a couple of inputs from our colleagues, but I'll come back to your points that you raised. There may be similar points by other partners. I see in the chat box an input, but also I see a hand, Susan Nolden. Luckily, we can see the name of Susan. Maybe Susan can now intervene.
Hello, Yunus. Good morning, and thank you for your great presentation. I was listening very attentively to Eva when she suggested to draft a position paper, and I would see a lot of milestones towards COP26 as indicated in your presentation, like the pre-COP in September, like the daring cities, and I would suggest to make use of all events of our organizations to have the commenting and drafting in eternal and also in consultation events with members and other partners, and to perhaps coming up with a really substantial draft to be finalized during the daring cities. I would just like to encourage you, Yunus, to go debate with the partners which events could be the milestone consultation events and how we would take it to COP. Also, I'd like to suggest perhaps a series of short pre-inputs online even before the COP in December to address certain regional groups of the parties or certain interest groups to like divide the position paper in the pillars we would address in the 7 pillars and have like very short inputs to each of the pillars to perhaps reach out to a bigger public. That was my brainstorming input. Thank you for listening, and a happy and healthy and confident new year to all.
Thank you, Susan. City of Bonn, that's really valuable. Your ideas and the communities, obviously, connected is also very appreciated. I'll get back to this papers once again, and when we have the second round of the discussions. I see in the chat box, for those who may have missed, we have 2 inputs. First, Roman Cruze from Climate Change Association. He is calling that you seem to consider the next COP will be with a very limited number of participants. Do you have more precise information from the organizer about this? That was his point. And we have a colleague, Nick Nuttall, a longtime friend of all of us from UNFCCC, from UNEP, and now Earth Day. Thanks for your input, Nick. Let me read his point. There's a unique mobilization underway to encourage governments to raise ambition on climate education under Article 12 of Paris Agreement. Likely, Biden administration will get behind this. Happy to share information because relevant for many authorities, local authorities and regions. Earth Day, education, Article 6. Perfect. I will back to the response on that. And Kai Emran, our dear friend from Sweden and Nordic communities, he highlights 3 points. I see 3 main opportunities to be strengthened. 1, Japan Zero Cities should be connected to an action related to NDC targets. 2, EU climate law, a dialogue about governance is necessary. 3, finance, how to minimize the gap between multi-level actors. I think these are all valuable inputs for all of our discussions. There is another input from Romain again. Do we already know the dates of pre-COP and if it's virtual or not? Yes, the dates of pre-COP. Just this was very simple. Let me start with that. So let's return now let's say some feedbacks from my side. But anyone who wants to respond to those points, feel free to also raise your hand. There may be information that I don't have and you may have, and therefore we can share. So let's start with the simple one from Romain. The dates of pre-COP are announced 28 to 30 of September as the Youth Climate COP, and then from 30th of September to 2nd of October as the pre-COP. And Italian government already announced a call for proposals to host side events, and we will circulate the link with the deadline of January 29th. And it is prepared to be both. I think it doesn't say exactly virtual or not, but in case it is virtual, it has to be minimization. Let's see. There's a form there. We can have a look at that. Okay. In the Q&A box, we also have an input from Eva about CMR position paper. So let's come back to this other topics raised by other colleagues. First of all, starting with Nick Natal. Nick, that's very helpful that you raised this issue. When I was presenting in the amplification, I used the term ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment. This is the agenda within the UNFCCC, which is focusing on Article 12 of the Paris Agreement and Article 6 of the UNFCCC, which is education, training, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. We would look forward to have some additional events. We have been supporting the original workshops. There was a declaration from Burgenland in Austria, and together with this focal point, Talia Burgermeier and ICLEI and global partners, especially from Austria, our dear colleague Miro, we will be kicking off a new project in the next couple of weeks and months. And definitely, I'm sure Earth Day should be connected to this, and or already you're in touch with them. But the point you raise is extremely important. I think this should be discussed also part of the pre-COP agenda. So from Earth Day, we can feed into the pre-COP because they're also connected to youth. But we definitely would be very happy to work with you with the Earth Day network. You can recall we also collaborated in the Pastoral project last year with Artists Declaration. Definitely, there are rooms to integrate more of those elements. That was exactly the type of initiatives we need. It's not just the agenda of energies, transport, finance, but there are other actors in the society who are driving the climate action, especially through their access to social partners, youth, families, education, culture. Therefore, the initiative is extremely important. I think Susan's proposals are all valuable, and Kai's points are all valuable, especially Japan. We are definitely looking forward to a good outcome from Japan. That's why I underlined it very, very aggressively. So we'll see how we will advance, because we're waiting for some updates from Japanese government. But this position papers and presidency, ahead of this meeting, I reached out to Kristin Moserdale. You remember we talked with her in our she's our contact point for local and regional governments. She's already announcing that there will be soon an expression of interest for events, but the proposal of having position papers, inputs to the negotiations, presidencies usually do not wish to influence the negotiations until they have the full responsibility, which is the last 2 days of the COPs. But they have their own initiatives. Under the current structure, in these 5 priority areas of the COP26 presidency, we don't have a direct effort on cities, but we have adaptation resilience, nature, energy, clean roads, and what was the other one? I don't see it. Finance, yeah. However, we also know, especially with the champions, they have a definition of built environment as the way the UK actors are dealing with cities. And we have seen that they already have some discussion with their own domestic network. So the idea to come up with position papers or documents is, I think it's extremely valuable, and we could definitely raise it with the UK presidency. I think we could raise this in the run-up to the next call of LGMA, and from now until then we can make some progress, and maybe we can invite Kristin and other leaders of the UK COP26 presidency to discuss how we can elevate the profile of local and regional governments or multi-level action in the preparations as part of the priorities of the UK presidency. I think that's a brilliant idea. We should take into account. Coming to the negotiations, in the UNFCCC space, we said that negotiations are halted, but discussions or consultations or deliberations are going on. So there are a lot of workshops. We're expecting a number of sessions to come up as well. There we can present our ideas, or we can also send documents to the agenda items on the online documentation submission page of the UNFCCC. There is nothing that prevents us. We can always do that. But as ICLEI, we, from knowing the realities of the process is that this year is particularly, the success depends on action at home. For us, knowing our resources, we would prefer to focus on our work with the national level. Anybody who wants to take a lead on drafting LGMA position papers, we're more than welcome to support, or we can delegate some of our partners to take this process onwards. This could be drafted internally, shared with the receiving inputs, and then we can send as a submission either on behalf of LGMA or some of the partners, a number of selected ones, regarding a number of agenda items. This could be Article 6, this could be loss and damage, whatever you call it. Nothing prevents us to send submissions. So we're open for those ideas. I think these are all valuable inputs that justifies the need to activate the working group of COP26. Therefore, I encourage us to think about how operationalization would be possible. I would come up with some ideas. You have already been aware that we have already started a separate mailing group for the working group. They have already access to a full file on the Google Docs. I think we need to reactivate this process. I think that will be the next agenda from now until the February agenda. I see another input. Okay, let's read it. It says Matteo, but I think it's not Matteo. Can someone type in who was the person who typed in this tension between UNFCCC and UK government? Who was the person who typed this comment? Yes, name. Nick. Oh, fantastic, Nick. Thanks a lot. So, Nick, his input to the discussion is that I think there's a tension between the UNFCCC and the UK government on physical or virtual COP. I think COP26 presidency wants a big physical event, and UNFCCC more cautious cause of lack of clarity and yet on COVID. So continuing from Nick's inputs, ITUC, the Education International Confederation of Teachers and Unions, close to 400 other organizations, including Earth Day Org, asking for all governments to adopt compulsory and assess climate education with a strong link to civic engagement by all countries for COP26, either under NDCs or special declaration. Remember, co-host COP26, pre-COP. Italy announced that just before COP25 and are now implementing this in their schools. Mexico, Maldives, Afghanistan, Peru, Argentina, also. I think, Nick, we're fully behind that. That's the reason why we have included in our sixth pillar of our roadmap, the amplifying of global climate action should include an element on arts, culture, youth, and especially a linkage to ACE. I would very much look forward to continuing with you and other partners. I encourage to listen to Nick's announcements. We can circulate in the LGMA mailing list, and definitely our initiative with ACE presidency or ACE negotiators, Austria, and Miro, who is actually one of the ambassadors of the European Climate Pact. We will come back to this, and we maybe can use this project also as an opportunity to elevate this. I definitely would suggest we have a separate discussion on that, so that to the next meeting in February of our call, we have a more concrete outcome. And Nick, any input from your side are more than welcome, so that we can build upon it. Thanks, Nick. It's always appreciated your efforts, and we look forward to build on it and support existing initiatives from the local and regional governments. I know this speaks a lot to the heart and minds of the local governments, because there are several local governments who have a mandate on education. It may not be the case for every local government, depending on the domestic administration authorities. Some of them have responsibility for education, but some not. But it doesn't prevent any local government to lead on public awareness and public education. They can host a number of training programs. So there are a lot of models. We have shared some of them in the ACE agendas as well. So this is an area that we can have a lot of engagement and a lot of interaction. So rest assured, we will look forward to contributing into this initiative to the extent possible. Obviously, any campaign needs resources, but we have to see we can raise appropriate modalities so that we can do our best. So definitely something to be discussed more seriously in the next couple of days. If no additional comments, I see no additional inputs. Many thanks for all your inputs to this lively discussion of the first LGMA webinar of the year. We will be soon circulating you the calendar dates for the rest of the monthly meetings. We'll also come back with an agenda. Also, by the way, Nick, on your point about the differences of the UK presidency and the UNFCCC, it's very, very likely that this may be the case. And we have colleagues, for example, from Glasgow City Hall. Duncan is with us. Obviously, every COP wants to welcome a lot of colleagues, but under the conditions of COVID, it's always a challenge. We have even heard what's going on, for example, in Tokyo. Tokyo and Japanese partners are also having huge discussions, and also the way it will be held or not, or how it will be held, will also have a lot of impact, because I think Olympics and COP will have some similarities in terms of number of mobilization. So let's see. But obviously, we do not want to upset our hosts, Glasgow, Scotland, UK, because they want to be proudly presenting their achievements or progress. And it's especially with such a lively debate in the UK these years, we would be very much look forward to be physically present in Glasgow. But I think we should also be very, very open-minded and prepared to different options. And I'm sure we will find a way to go forward. But at the end, we would be looking forward to the final official decisions of the UNFCCC and others. But let's see. As we said, this meeting was like a kickoff, like a starter. But official information when it comes soon. We will be coming back to this in the weeks ahead with more updated information. Our offer to invite COP26 presidency, Scottish government, and Glasgow is open. We will get back to them. In the next LGMA webinars, we will expect to have more of their, maybe they can share their preparations physically or virtually, and this could help our plans as well. With this, we're already 3 minutes over the time of our call. And thank you very much once again, and look forward to another call in the coming days. And I wish you the best. And feel free to reach out to virtually by emails, and stay tuned for our updates from LGMA mailing list as well. Bye-bye.